Dear Juan, even when we first started messaging on Tinder, you knew that I was both a scientist and an artist. I was a published astronomer and a poet, a songwriter and a biochemist. I had been this way since I was a little kid. If there was one thing I wanted to do, it was to know everything, and you knew that was my goal. On our 5th date, I told you about how, as I was growing up, I always thought the arts were only approximations of the sciences. To me, they both tried to answer the same questions. What is a mind? What is emotion? How do we make sense of the universe? But science always seemed to me the better way of answering them. If we knew the position of every particle in the universe and every equation of the universe, we could predict everything. Not just about the motion of planetary bodies, but human things too. Love, society, fear, sadness, all could be explained scientifically. What is love but a surge of oxytocin after all? But then I told you how my view changed, in part because I fell in love with you. Maybe the sciences were really only approximations of the arts. Maybe science would never really be able to capture love. Feeling the kind of love I felt for you, the first time I ever felt that kind of love, seemed inexplicable. It seemed almost unfair, wrong, immoral even. To think of what I felt for you as a simple rush of hormone, it had to be more emotional, more human, less scientific. Love had to be more than just the action of a polypeptide at my synapses, and even today, I still don't really know. I don't know which is more accurate at attaining the answers to those questions I so desperately want to solve. All I know is that my old view was turned upside down. The summer had ended. I was back at Wake, and we had for the past 6 weeks been in a long-distance relationship. The sun was nearing the western horizon over Wake Forest. Earlier that afternoon, we had gotten into our first fight, where I called you out for being distant from me over the past 2 weeks. We had barely been texting. We had only talked on our phone once. And I know we were both busy and you were worried about your grades. But it didn't even seem like you were my boyfriend anymore. You called me that warm October evening, and that's when you were crying. And that's when you said, between heavy, strained breaths, "I don't think we should date anymore." The words echoed back and forth between the bounds of my skull. Even now, I can still hear their reverberations, that pained sound in your voice. I didn't imagine it would end like that. 20 minutes before, I had to tutor at the writing center, the night before my Orgo 2 exam, which I would later tell you with particular venom that I aced. Even though I'm not an angry person, if a stranger saw me in that moment, they'd probably think I needed a little anger management. I went off. Not quite yelling, but not exactly speaking either. It was all welling up like a pressure through my chest, a pounding in my heart, a disbelief and confusion in my mind. We were just planning a romantic weekend for ourselves for my fall break. What the fuck changed? And "You're gonna regret this" are some of the particularly good lines I remember from that moment. But the stress of the moment made everything blur together. I know at one point I was in front of my freshman dorm, at another moment in front of the chemistry building. But I don't remember walking. I told myself that I'd remember every word, but I only remember a handful. And all I remember you doing was crying in the background. I'm sure you were talking, but I don't know what you said anymore. My science side told me that I should have been able to predict this. My artsy side lets things be unpredictable. But in that moment, my science side took control of my brain. Every movement of every particle in the universe had led up to that moment. Apparently, I just wasn't smart enough to predict it. I must have missed something. Some crucial clue had missed my observations. Maybe it was because I was in North Carolina and you were in Massachusetts that I didn't catch it. I settled for a few days on the hypothesis that you were having a mental breakdown and were lashing out at me, and that you would come to your senses and back to me when you would eventually realize the gravity of what had happened. My hypothesis and prediction were wrong, which was elucidated when we FaceTimed a few days later. You were so distant. I don't think we made any eye contact through the screens of our phone, even once. Your voice was soft, exhausted. You looked like you had been through hell, still very put together, but in your expressive eyes it looked like you were staring through a pane of glass. Not exactly part of the world at the moment. I spoke more softly than I did that Tuesday evening. I'm sure I seemed distant too, but I was trying to reach out, like I was grappling through the night without a flashlight, trying to understand you, to latch on to some concrete, absolute reason why you broke up with me. My science side demanded it. I decided to force myself to work outside, in a courtyard on Wake Forest campus. I thought the warmth of the autumn sunlight would make me feel better, and indeed it was a beautiful day. There wasn't a cloud in the sky, and there was only a slight breeze that ruffled and occasionally flipped the pages of my cell bio textbook. I brought my journal with me that day. I knew something was forming, somewhere in the back of my mind, about ready to brim over the periphery of my subconscious. I had told you in the past that writing songs and poems to me functioned as one of the only ways I could process emotions. I would often find myself needing to write, because that was the only way I could make sense of what was going on in my mind. And that was what I felt that morning. Things had been so confusing. That Tuesday had seen the end of our relationship. My mind had been going a mile a minute ever since. Texts to my friends telling them I wasn't okay, and 4 a.m. panic attacks that jarred me from my sleep, telling me desperately to do something, to call you, to reach out, to turn back time to when things were okay, even though nothing could be done. But that morning, I realized the climax of the drama had come and was going, and it was my job to figure out its resolution. And I knew writing was going to be an integral part of that. And as I read about the extracellular matrix preparing for my quiz the following day, I heard it. This song felt brewing beneath my conscious awareness, was suddenly overflowing. The chorus came first. You still keep the poem I wrote you. Still stay awake at night, still going through life, thinking about me sometimes. I threw aside my textbook. My quiz didn't even matter at this moment. What did matter was pinning down the verses that were flowing through me. My vision focused down on the intersection of the pen in my hands and the lines of the pages in my journal. I wrote semi-frantically, to get everything down before it left. The chorus continued, still holding on to the pictures on the wall, keeping me there in the back of your mind. There was the title, The Back of Your Mind, and more words came. Somewhere in your brain are synapses designed with the sole purpose of remembering me, of remembering our relationship. Somewhere in the back of your mind resides images, sounds, sensations of us kissing by the water on our first date. Me telling you I loved you for the first time when we played mini golf one warm July evening. And you waking up one night, turning around to face me, and telling me that it was the most satisfying feeling to be in love with your best friend. I don't know if you still keep the poem I wrote you. I don't know if I'm still there in the back of your mind. That's the way I'd like to think the story ends. But I can tell you this, you're still in the back of my mind. And I don't always know if I'm fine or not. I haven't reached that someday yet. I just know that every day that goes by is a day I'm closer to it. My science side predicts it, my artsy side feels it coming. And yes, I've gone on dates since, and you have your new boyfriend now. I hope he treats you right. I hope he treats you the way I treated you. And I hope you find contentment someday. Even after everything that happened, I think you deserve that. All the best, James.